You know what my theory is? Here's my theory. Yeah. My theory is all the other aliens out there, they don't want to come over and talk to us. Cause they're just like, dude, we see how you handle your own people. And it's not good. We're the dirt grubs of the universe.
we're the Joe Dirt of the universe.
We are the Joe Dirt of the universe. If I was an intelligent life form, I would not want to talk to us. I'd be like, oh, just avoid the Milky Way galaxy altogether. You don't want to stop there, knick-knack. Because if you do stop over there, the locals there will kill you. And then they will say they killed you because of your skin.
Yeah.
Or because you didn't worship their invisible god.
Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh, my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Brian, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Kyneton, and my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
I was anally probed by the Flatwoods Monster.
Oh, you were, huh?
Yeah, I was like, they did it in my Uncle Ted's tool shed, and they made themselves look like my Uncle Ted. And, you know what? Brian, I don't know if I can record anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, the little bomb in the base of your cranium, like, is it gonna go off if you talk too much about it or something? Yeah. So anyway, welcome. If you hear my voice, it sounds crap. I'm gonna get into why it sounds like crap. If you watched our live stream of Money Plane and you listened to the episode of Money Plane. You might have noticed that my voice sounded like shit then. It's moderately better. I don't know about you, John. I think it sounds a little moderately better than last time.
It doesn't have the Turner thing going on. You got
I have the Kathleen Turner thing going on?
Yeah. Smoky, sexy.
Oh, I don't know if I want that. With the shoulder pads, too?
Oh, yeah.
You got to have the shoulder pads. Yeah. But anyway, we're on episode 238 this week. And this week we have a little indie feature that got sent my way by a local boy named James Lockhart, and it is called Flatwoods. It's an indie sci-fi feature that details about the supposedly real Flatwoods Monster in West Virginia, which I did not know anything about.
I didn't know either. Yeah,
didn't know.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say with this, as we were talking before recording, I kind of realized that this must be based on a real thing because, like, no indie movie, I don't care how much of a budget you have, has that much production value. I'm like, oh, this must be like a real town that has all this stuff in there.
Yeah. But anyway, regarding my shitty voice. So I mentioned last episode, and I say last episode because hasn't come out yet at the time of this recording. And that's because of the reason why my voice sounds like shit. So I got a cold right around Easter. Okay. And I blame my daughter because she's 3 years old, going to be 4. And she, like all kids, they, they're kind of germ factories. Okay.
Petri dishes. Oh,
Petri dishes. They totally are. So I had this cold, and my wife got the cold, and my daughter got better, and we tested her for COVID, like, right before she went back to school because spring break happened and all that fun stuff. And I'm like, okay, this cold sucks, and that's what I thought it was. So flash forward to at the time of this recording, so this would have been last week. So we're recording on the 1st of May, so before then, week before last week, and I woke up, no joke, with the chills, and I think you all know kind of where this is going.
You have chills, they're multiplying, and you can't smell what she's cooking.
I actually can. So long story short, I was in a meeting for work. I was like, why do I got the chills all of a sudden? It makes no sense. And I asked my wife, I'm like, what? Did you turn the heat up? Because it feels warm. And weather here in Pittsburgh has been kind of off and on. Like we've had some days where it's like 80 freaking degrees, which I'm like, in April? And then it's all of a sudden back to the 30s. So it's very, very bipolar weather right now. So I'm thinking like that, but I'm like, this is weird. So like after my meeting, I go downstairs, I making lunch, and I'm like, I'm going to grab a COVID test. I'm like, I'm just going to try, and I've taken countless COVID tests. John, you've taken countless COVID tests, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a ritualistic thing now. You're like, oh, well, you got the sniffles, go and get a COVID test. So I go and grab the COVID test. I'm making food. And while this is going on, I'm like, I'll just do the swabby thing, put it in there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm making my food. I look down and I'm like, there's a faint line. That's not good for positive. And I'm like, oh, shit. So I look at my wife, who's also in a meeting, because we both work from home. Okay. And I mouthed her. I'm like, it's COVID. And she's like, what? I'm like, COVID. She's like, oh, shit. So I'm like, oh, fuck. Here's where it comes. And keep in mind, like if you've listened to the show during the pandemic, you know that we have been very much less like, wear your fucking mask, don't go out, be safe, be vigilant. So like, I haven't stopped. like that's the thing here is I didn't just say like, oh, well, numbers are down. Fuck the mask. I'm done. I've been wearing my mask religiously. Okay. And sure enough, got the COVID anyway. And then of course, as anyone who listens to this show or has dealt with it themselves knows, the minute one person in your house gets COVID, it's like a game of dominoes. Over the course of the past week, literally one by one, each one of my family members, starting with my wife down to my stepchildren to even my daughter now, we just now got the whole word that we all in the entire house, all 6 of us got the vid. So
isn't that fun?
It's fun. Now here's the positive thing. And this is, I'm not trying to make this that type of show, but if I didn't have my vaccines, if I didn't have a booster, I know that this virus would have kicked my ass. Okay.
Vaccines are just so Bill Gates can put microchips in my butt.
I'm just telling you, it's the difference, at least for me, between maybe one day of a shitty ass headache and the difference between that and, I don't know, event. So cause I'm not going to lie. I have extra pounds on me. I'm probably one of those people who would end up on, event if it got serious, but fortunately, knock on wood, it's been just like a really bad flu that's now just fucking annoying. So
vaccines are mind control, so we give our babies to Hollywood liberals to eat.
Doesn't work that way. So
Tom Hanks is going to eat my baby.
So hopefully next episode, when we talk about practical versus CGI effects, my voice will not sound like this, and I won't have to spend so much time editing out my coughs, which I can tell you right now, this episode's going to be full of that.
Well,
there's one.
If your voice isn't better by the next one, I'll just be Bev Big Head.
Oh, I mean, you could do that. I'm always fine with you pulling a Bev Big Head. Excuse me. So, talking about Flatwoods. Now, here's the thing. I've known James for a while. We actually worked together on a film that has yet to come out called Batshit, and that's kind of how I got to know him. He's the editor on that, and I kind of came in as the primary special effects and VFX person on the film. So that's kind of how we got to know. And I saw that he was working on this movie, and this movie has a lot of Southwest PA locals. Like, I mean, John, you saw the cast list on this thing, but there's a ton of people that we know, right?
Yeah.
Like almost all of them.
Yeah, John, and God, I can never remember how to
Iwanonkiw.
Thank you. Yeah. I can never remember how to pronounce his last name, but yeah, he's in everything.
He literally is. Did I ever tell you about the fact that John Iwanonkiw was the first actual actor that I ever worked with, period. Like as a professional actor.
Huh.
Yeah. In college, I looked to Craigslist to find actors for my senior film. And John I needed the role of a mugger. And the thing is like, I've noticed that all of my films tend to have a mugger in them. For the most part, at least the early films did. Remember in my film, I ended up being a mugger in Tablet of Tales. If you remember back in the day, grad school days, man. But yeah, I needed someone to play a mugger, and unfortunately, I didn't really want someone who was like a snot-nosed college kid. So I needed an actual like older man to play a mugger, and I put an ad on Craigslist. Thought I'm surprised didn't get some creepers. But back then Craigslist was a little bit more, I don't know, professional in terms of actually finding like actual actors. Cause there really wasn't Facebook. Facebook wasn't nearly as big as it is now. There was MySpace, but MySpace kind of sucked then too. And John messaged me and we got to meet, and he's literally one of the coolest guys you ever meet. He'll tell you stories about how he was in the Night of the Living Dead 1990 version, how he's met Will Smith, how he's worked on, I think he did stuff with Russell Crowe when they did Next 3 Days here. I think he probably was in Jack Reacher. So like he literally is someone who is in every Pittsburgh production that rolls through town. And he was kind of my first like foray into knowing the acting scene around here. But like in this production, you also have like David Ogradowski, who is in everything. Nice guy, really nice guy. Gary Lee Vincent, Christina I'm going to butcher this name, Chickis. Is that her last name?
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. But it sounds right. Yeah. I want to be like, that's right, Brian. And she's like,
that's right, Brian.
It's pronounced Smith. Like, what?
Yeah. Even a buddy of mine, Jack Davis, who was in one of my films I've known for years, he was in this as an alien, which I didn't know that. So yeah, tons of people. In terms of just, filmmaking depth here, you have people like, here, who else is in here? Who did the crew here? Phil Nardozzi is in this. Edward Pfeiffer. I mean, a lot of people that I know. Jason Baker does a crap ton of special effects makeup. I even think that Fred Vogel of Toe Tag did some work on this too for a couple things. So
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Lots of people that we know. And, this movie is, for the most part, it's kind of I view it as almost a love letter to this specific type of urban legend about this alien or monster or whatever you want to call it that apparently happened in the Flatwoods area, West Virginia.
Yeah, and like obviously it's nice to get an education on folklores that I didn't know about, because it's like Bigfoot or the New Jersey Devil or any other, famous small town alien thing. I bet there's probably an unsolved mysteries on this.
There probably is.
I'm going to look into it. Yeah,
there probably is.
But yeah, it's I will say that I do admire this film for going balls to the wall. And as we were talking before we recorded that, nobody was phoning anything in. You could tell that everybody wanted this to be as good as it could be. But I do think that it's dangerous to take on science fiction on an indie budget. And while I will say that I do admire it, there was quite a few issues I had with structure, shot design, things like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
God, that's going to come with an independent film. So we'll obviously get into the good, the bad, and the indifferent here, kind of breaking things down.
I mean, the thing is, we also don't want to trash this movie, and we always said,
no, no, this
is not a bad. We've seen some Breen films, and we'll trash Breen all day, every day. I mean, the man doesn't try, and in this movie, I think there is absolutely everyone on board. Definitely gave it their all to try in this one, but sci-fi especially, it's I think sci-fi is harder to do right than horror, because horror, I mean, you can just have blood and gore and you're pretty much good. You get a guy in a hockey mask and you're good, but science fiction, it's really difficult, especially if you're trying to do something with aliens and space and all sorts of stuff. Like, it requires a balance of VFX prowess as well as your ability to really communicate the story. And it's a tough act to follow. I really think it is. I think sci-fi, everyone thinks that sci-fi is easy and it's kind of in the same ballpark as horror, but I really don't. I think that horror is easy for the most part.
Because the audience is 1,000 times more forgiving of horror than they ever are or would be with science fiction.
Totally. But I want to make sure that people understand that we're not going to spoil this whole film. I want people to watch this, so we'll definitely link to it in our show notes here of where to watch Flatwoods, and definitely give them support, because the truth of the matter is, and I've said this before, if you're like me and you get tired of seeing the same movies over and over again, and what I mean by that is that you go to the cinema and quite literally it's choose your own superhero film. Like, which one do you want? Because they're all going to be the same. Now, don't get me wrong. We saw Batman and we loved it. But it's not out of the realm of reality to say that just about every movie that you see nowadays that's popular is pretty much the same story. Would that be correct to say?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hint cynical. It's a hint cynical, but yeah.
A hint cynical? I think just a hint?
Yeah, but I think you're onto something, I mean, because you look at like the top 12 highest grossing movies of any year. They're all Disney and they're all Marvel, Star Wars, or an existing property.
Yes.
Pixar.
Yeah. They're all existing property. They're all something that's already been retold again, or it's a remake, or it's a sequel to something. And it's harder and harder to find original things that are just original stories. And I think that's the one thing that I want to point to, is that when you do watch an independent film, that's not going to some big studio. That's not going to, some venture capitalist somewhere. That is going to the filmmaker for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong. There are, of course, the movies like, from The Asylum that are just garbage. But I really want to stress that, we're going to talk about this movie, and there are going to be things that we loved about it and things that we hated about it. But I really want people to make up their own minds whenever we're talking about a new film and actually go and see the movie themselves. So I'm going to stress that you definitely check this movie out. Where is it located? I think it is on. Where is it at?
Well, while you're searching for that, I would say that, you're probably speaking hyperbolically, but I wouldn't say there was anything that I hated in this movie. I
am speaking hyperbolic. I'm not saying I hate. Hate's a strong word.
Because all it was just really just nitpicking filmmaking kind of things. Like, there weren't enough cuts here. There weren't enough dynamic camera movements. There was weird how they, block this scene, or I didn't like the acting here per se. It's just like all kinds of little things, and it will be a little bit hard to kind of get into the detail, because as you said, bro, we don't want to spoil too much of this, so I don't want to like break down scene by scene or anything. But they were just kind of like some technical issues more than anything else.
So this movie's up on YouTube. You can rent it there, and I believe you can also get it on iTunes. And there's probably a couple places, but I'll make sure to link this so that anyone who likes this sort of thing and definitely has an interest in this should watch it, because I really want to stress, support indie film when you can. And especially just because it exposes you to different types of storytelling. So with that little disclaimer of the way, and I told you I'm going to be coughing a lot this episode.
Take a shot every time Brian coughs.
What was that?
I said take a shot every time Brian coughs, everybody.
I don't want our audience to die. So.
Well, one thing that I thought was odd is that the movie is 62 minutes long, which is, I mean, I know that that's like a stupid place to start, but it kind of bothered me. I'm like, this isn't a short or a feature. I don't know what this runtime is.
Here's the thing. There's no definitive length of time that you could call a movie when it is, say, an hour. Like I've seen people tell me like, oh, a movie like that should be 55 minutes long so it can fit on, say, like TV between commercials. Which I'm like, all right. I mean, that's one way of going about it. But I've also heard people tell me, oh, you got to get to 90 minutes. Here's the thing I look at it. I don't care how long or short the movie is. Is it effective within that timeline? Is it effective? Do you have the edit tight enough to the point where it's clearly communicating the story, or is it filled with fluff? So for Jamie, I mean, if 60 minutes was what he needed to get the story told, then great. So I mean, that's neither here nor there. But I have seen people who've said, oh, it's not a feature unless it's 60 minutes or not 60, but 70 or 90. Personally, I'm a fan of shorter the better. That's just me. From a distribution standpoint, though, and you and I both know this, John, we've seen this in our own, filmmaking journey, that the distributors like that 70-minute mark. That's where they like it. They don't even like 90. They like 70 minutes.
Yeah, between 70 and 90 is that kind of sweet spot, 78 minutes, like, boom, you got yourself there, something that people are going to take as, okay, this is a feature film. But I mean, hey, maybe things are changing, maybe they have no plan to like distribute on Blu-ray or 4K or anything like that. And, if it's streaming, who technically cares how long it is?
I mean, that's the truth of it too, is I've seen movies that have been much shorter than that have been really well on streaming. So I think Wolf Cop, I think, is a short on Shudder, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Shudder's the Wild Wild West,
Shudder
really
don't
give a fuck. Yeah.
They really don't give a fuck. Now I got to ask you, just kind of a primer this. Yeah. John, do you believe in aliens and UFOs?
I don't disbelieve the idea that there is something else out there, but I don't know if I've ever heard of any alien tale that I'm like, oh, I absolutely believe in that. Like Area 51 or, this town, like what they went through, or anything I've ever seen on an Unsolved Mysteries, or, that shows sightings from, if you're 90s
that was
kids.
Such a good show.
Yeah, if you're a 90s kid and you watch Fox, like sightings, like, I don't know if I believe in any of that. I tend to be very skeptical, like a Dana Scully approach to that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean that I don't believe that with all those thousands of or billions of stars out there and all those different galaxies and universes, that there's not some other life forms out there. So I would say abstractly, yes, I do believe in aliens.
Okay. I am a bit more accepting than that, but that's okay. My wife makes fun of me all the time over it. We had our first fight over my belief in ghosts. That was interesting. That was interesting.
That's incredible that you guys fought over it. And I'm glad that that was the fight, not money, religion, politics, children.
When I say fight, I mean I got offended that she was making fun of my belief in ghosts and the supernatural. And she was like, I was just making a fucking joke. And I'm like, that's our first fight. But I just don't watch Ghost Adventures around her anymore, so I have to watch that on my own time. But I do believe that there are aliens out there. I here's the thing. I'm of the mind that there are too many things that you can chalk up to it not being real. Like I think with a lot of people who have seen something, or there's common things that occur when it comes to people who've, seen lights in the sky, or I'm not even sure about the abduction stuff, but like there's too many people over the past 60, 70 years or so to run it off as just, well, that's not real, or it's mass psychosis. I look at it from the standpoint of, just kind of like you, John, of I'm not presumptive enough to say that, oh, yes, we are the only people in the entire universe. There couldn't possibly be any other life forms out there. Blah, blah, blah. I don't buy that part. I do think that there is something out there, or multiple types of life out there, just because, the conditions we have that make our life exist is not that unique. Really isn't.
Yeah. Could you imagine if it did turn out that of all the great things of all the universe, that we are somehow the only accidental genetic mutation that exists?
I would find that hilarious. You know what my theory is? Here's my theory. Yeah. My theory is all the other aliens out there, they don't want to come over and talk to us. Because they're just like, dude, we see how you handle your own people. And it's not good. We're we are? We're the dirt grubs of the universe.
we're the Joe Dirt of the universe.
We are the Joe Dirt of the universe. If I was an intelligent life form, I would not want to talk to us. I'd be like, oh, just avoid the Milky Way galaxy altogether. You don't want to stop there, knick-knack, because if you do stop over there, the locals there will kill you. And then they will say they killed you because of your skin.
Yeah.
Or because you didn't worship their invisible god.
Yeah. Or you arrived with a helmet on. They went, "You're wearing a mask, Fauci lover."
Or they'd say, they'd say, yeah, don't talk to those people. They criticize their own people because of a virus. So just avoid them altogether. You can look, but just don't land there unless you have to. Yeah. But that's my theory, is that the other life forms out there, they don't want to talk to us. It's not that they don't exist. They're playing stay away from that part of the universe there because they crazy. But getting back to this movie opens up, and it's the structure of this movie is one of the things that I think is unique, in that it is not entirely a linear structure. And now I'm talking about linear structure. I'm talking like most movies will go from like plot point to plot point to plot point along the line. This one kind of starts off that way, but then kind of morphs into a documentary type section that interweaves the narrative between the documentary sections.
And I did find this very frustrating, because I don't think it was handled as flawlessly as it could, because it just ended up being confusing. And I am one who loves non-linear. I stand by it. I try to write anything non-linear, but I felt like this was a little disjointed. I mean, it's not that I couldn't figure out what was going on, but it's just like, I also didn't like, there were scenes where it was like documentary, but then like it was then feature, like she's like, shooting something in her car, but then it cuts to like, a camera like outside filming her as she like walks to get something out of her trunk. It's like, oh, now we're back to like regular movie, but now we're back to documentary,
Yeah, that I will say that I do think that the structure of this is something that could have been improved upon. I'm actually perfectly okay with it being a broken apart non-linear type of structure. I thought that the way the documentary footage could have been handled could have been a bit better. Now, here's the thing. That documentary footage, some of it featured real ufologists. So, like, those are actual, like, real legit people who study UFOs. They are not actors. So that part in the film actually is real. I'm assuming that those are locals to that area. But it interweaves it with this fictional Men in Black type of scenario. Now, one thing that I found was a little confusing was figuring out kind of where in the timeline of events that this stuff is happening at. So, for instance, it starts off, we're like 50 some odd years earlier, and like we see the monster come down, or the alien come down, or monster, whatever it is, and kind of that's part of the story that people that currently live in the Flatwoods actually know about, and it's recreated. And then we flash forward to our lead character, Carol James's mom, discovering an alien, getting picked up by the Men in Black, and then subsequently dying. And then we flash forward again to now an adult Carol James, now working on this documentary, not having any memory of her mother at all. So I felt that structure was a bit disjointed, was a bit hard. And there were times when, like, they're talking about the documentary, but then they're also referring to it as a YouTube video. So, like, there are things in this that I think just some time focusing on what is the most effective way of conveying this narrative structure to an audience that is not familiar with this stuff. Because honestly, like, John, you and I mean, I didn't know anything about the Flatwoods Monster up until watching this movie. And I think that's the thing, is that,
as did I. Yeah.
For people who know about this probably would be okay, you know? And that's when we said that, like, the people who made this movie definitely cared about the legend of this monster and about the source material. But, like, for us we've never heard of this, it's hard for us to follow that on top of just what the narrative is when you are jumping back and forth between documentary footage. So that's kind of, now I also think that he chose the color, you know, black and white. He chose that scheme to represent the documentary footage. But then there were times when that black and white was used with the narrative footage. And that felt a bit hard to follow if you've established that color is going to be the narrative and then black and white's going to be the documentary. There's one part, like, when Carol James gets, like, kidnapped later in the movie, that was in black and white. I'm like, why is that in that color scheme when that's supposed to represent Doc?
And I didn't know why the documentary footage was in black and white. Anyway, she's shooting on a Canon DSLR camera, so it's not like, you know, a movie that takes place in the 70s and they're shooting a documentary in the movie's narrative, and then obviously it cuts to the footage from the camera, and it's 16 millimeter black and white film. Like, you'd understand, like, but why would she be shooting in black and white for this?
I think it's more or less to just kind of, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily explained within the movie itself why it's in black and white. It's just supposed to be explained that there is a delineation between two different realities. We're given one reality that's the narrative structure of the film, and then another that is this documentary that the character, Carol James, is creating. And that's how Jamie, the director of the film, was able to delineate between those two. But I do think that is a question that should have been answered. There were a lot of things in this movie that I felt could have used a bit more explanation. And it didn't have to be anything too hard. It should just be like a scene here or there. You know, like, there was one character that gets explained, that gets introduced. And I was like, when did this character get introduced? Who Carol talks to, who gives her some drink to drink that's supposed to, like, get rid of whatever programming the Men in Black did. And I'm not trying to give away everything in the movie. I'm just trying to, like, this is part of the plot to bring up.
And it is clear that scene, this is clear that the writer and director, which is the same person, is a dude, because no woman would go to the house of a complete stranger that they heard was weird, and then in this house, completely alone with this person, hands them a drink and says, drink this. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's going to open your mind. No woman would ever drink that drink. Like, that's only a guy would think that would be.
That's kind of true. Yeah. Granted, I've written stuff that I'm just like, yeah, this is a guy wrote this. So I mean, I get that, but you're right. But my point was, like, I do not remember getting explained who that person was.
Yeah,
like David's character Manny does bring him up when he first meets with Carol, but we don't ever get like her go to his house or like a phone call or an email with just like, hey, I'm so and so. Like, that was the thing, as I think that this movie misses some very simple expositional scenes that need to fill some of these gaps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there are little expositional scenes, and they don't have to be anything too hard. They could just be like, Manny says, hey, I have a person you should meet. He can help you out. All right. And then we cut to another scene where it is email from said person or phone call from said person who says, hey, meet me at so-and-so at this time. And then we get that scene that we had in the film where they actually meet. Like, that sort of thing would help flesh out some of this narrative, for me at least. Because there were oftentimes just like, how do we get to this point? And I kept asking myself that, how do we get to this point? But yeah, John, what about you?
Yeah, and I was thinking that I would have liked possibly if to be a complete mockumentary, and to go that route, and instead of flashing between like narrative and a documentary inside of the narrative, like why not just have the whole thing be? And I know that kind of can limit a lot of what you can do creatively, but yeah, I would have preferred it to just be a fake documentary. But there is a legitimate documentary on this monster / alien, whatever you want to call it, out there. So maybe they didn't want to get confused with an actual documentary short that there is on this, creature out there. So
yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I am not a fan of the Blair Witch type approach, but I do think that in this case, it probably would have worked better. And it probably would, especially if you're in the woods and you do have access to some of these special effects that they do have. I mean, if you did take that sort of handheld approach to it, it probably would work well. Especially because, he did weave in legit actors and like not legit, but just legit UFOologists in this. So I kind of agree with you on that. And I wouldn't call that necessarily a mockumentary, but just that sort of structure, I think probably would work for what he's trying to do here. Because it does kind of feel like he's trying to go back and forth between two different worlds. Now I do want to talk a little bit about the acting. What were your thoughts on the acting by some of the characters in this?
I was fairly okay with most of the acting, but and I do hate to say this, but the because I'm sure she's a very nice person, but the lead actress in this was
Mandy
quite a bit
Simpson.
missing from. Yeah, I didn't buy anything that she was selling. But she was far from terrible, but I didn't buy her as a lead in this. But so in some of the acting, like I thought was pretty good. Of all things, I was distracted by Edward Pfeiffer's handlebar mustache. Like I was like, oh, okay, that man in black. He's got a nice little stash action going on.
Yeah. He does have a nice stash. I'm jealous of that stash.
Yeah. He didn't do anything wrong as an actor, but I'm like, hey, what the hell?
No. I think some of the delivery of the lines could have been improved. I mean, and I get that it's hard with this sort of material to really deliver some of those dramatic moments. You know, it really is. But I think that, you know, you've got really talented local actors in this. And I think they can definitely do the work with some of these lines. Like, I mean, I've seen David in a bunch of stuff. And while he was good as the role of Manny, I thought he could have done more. You know, he's supposed to be a very pivotal character in this film. And I felt he kind of served as almost like exposition.
Yeah.
At parts. And I'm like, if you've got a character like that, if you've got an actor like David, stretch him. Like he can do it. And, you know, the Men in Black that they're featured in this, you know, Edward Pfeiffer and John Iwanonkiw, you know, they did an okay job. I thought they did fine, but like they're supposed to play Men in Black. So it's like you're supposed to be kind of robotic looking. I didn't have a problem too much with Mandy Simpson in it, but just kind of as you said, like I think that just the way that she was directed to react to certain things could have been improved, more or less.
Yeah, it was more like even the quiet scenes with the lead actress, because when she was like, you know, suffering because her head was hurting because of aliens and stuff, and, you know, I'll just be vague about it that way, but like, she's doing pretty good here, you know. So I don't know if that comes down to direction or what, but it just seemed like when she was doing the documentary scenes, this when I had a, you know, or talking to people about the film she was making, I didn't buy it as much, but
yeah. Now, I do want to talk a bit about some good things in this. So one of the good things I got to say in this is that for an independent film, visual effects in this were actually pretty damn good.
Yeah, there was some time put in.
I looked at this and I'm like, okay, because now keep in mind, I'm not going to give this thing like, you know, 4 stars or 5 stars or 10 stars, or wherever across the board. I mean, you could tell that some stuff was still a little rough, but compared to other low budget science fiction films that I've seen, and I've seen a lot, there definitely was some real effort in trying to make some of this stuff look convincing. The UFO scenes, actually seeing the spacecraft appear in the wooded areas, seeing the alien, the main Flatwoods alien, the ending shot with the UFO kind of coming overhead across the world. Like, those are some pretty solid FX shots that were done in this. And I really appreciate the effort put into them. I do got to say that the masks that were used for the gray aliens, I don't like them.
It's
nothing personal. It's just,
you know, immediately what I thought, right?
What'd you think?
Troll 2.
Oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Just the like the digital effects, chef's kiss.
No, the digital effects are great.
Yeah. The people in the outfits, which I know one of them was the director. I think he was the dead alien. But
yeah.
I was just like, that's no good. You know?
Yeah. My buddy Jack was one of the aliens too. My buddy Jack Davis, he was one of the aliens. So yeah. I mean, I know that it's tough trying to get those sorts of things, but here's the thing, and this is my piece of advice regarding this. It's the same thing with horror. If the wide shot is not going to work with the effect you got, you fix it with editing. You do a couple shots there that are close up that only show so much, and you piece it together and let the audience's brain do the rest. That's how you solve that problem. Because if it were me, I would have probably scrapped the gray aliens. I'm not talking necessarily about the Flatwoods Monster that they showed, because that was a CGI. You can totally tell that was a CGI alien. It looked great. But the gray aliens, those traditional, like, gray skin, big bulbous eye ones, those honestly were not convincing at all. And I probably would have scrapped them and maybe just shown like a hand or something like that rather than full body, because it takes you completely out of the movie when you see that. And you could say, well, it's just more or less for like homage to those sorts of movies that clearly had like, phony looking aliens. I don't think that works though, especially when you couple it with clearly really solid work on the digital, alien side. So like it kind of doesn't jive when you've got both.
Yeah. And you hit the nail right on the head, Brian. Like, that one shot where it's technically a wide, but they are, it's almost a medium. Like if you want to use those alien costumes you have them go about another like 40 yards back and maybe put them behind some like twigs or something, Yeah.
Or here's the thing too. And this is something that I've done. I actually did this with Batshit is, if you've got something like just a phony Halloween mask, you can digitally modify it so it is a bit more realistic. There is a ton of shit you could do to augment those masks so that they actually look a bit more realistic. And I did that with one of the shots in Batshit. We had a shot that it was going to be a shot that wasn't even going to be used. And the director of it, a guy named Todd Killer Wolfson, was like, hey, do you think we can do anything with this? And I'm like, yeah. So like it was shot against a green screen. The mask wasn't that great. And I managed to make it look scary, like a floating head, and made the mouth move independently. And this is stuff that, on set wasn't shot that way. But it just requires that, you have a little bit of ingenuity and try to kind of make use of a shitty, Halloween mask. I'm not trying to say there's a shitty Halloween mask. I'm just trying to say that compared to the VFX that you have, it doesn't work well. And that's kind of where I'm thinking is, how can we make this mask a bit more realistic compared to the other stuff? But, I gotta go back to it. If you can't, you cut it. Like, that's just what you do. You find a way around it. You put them back. You do a close up of something other than the mask, a hand here, a silhouette here. I mean, that's the sort of thing you do that can save those sorts of things.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways around too. Like I know, I imagine when David Fincher was watching the edit of Alien 3 and said, "Oh man, that like footage we shot against the blue screen and dropped in kind of looks like shit. So why don't we do like when the people are running down the hall, we'll do the POV of the alien so that we don't have to show it very often."
Yeah. But for every David Fincher who does the POV of the alien, you get the Sam Raimi who in Army of Darkness decides to put the Deadites with mesh eyes in the mask right up in front when the camera is panning across them. Howard Berger and Howard Kurtzman and what's his face? The other one, K&B. I forget the other guy, but anyway, they're all like screaming, going like, "Hey, you got to put that guy in the back because I've got the very expensive Deadite prop in the front that's moving and has articulating jaws and shit, and you've got the guy, the extra with mesh eyes in the front, clear as day." That sort of thing does break the illusion. So that's one sticking point, at least with the effects, that I would have liked to have seen. Now,
can I mention one of the things
go ahead.
I very much enjoyed, but it also had one of the things that I possibly was among the least things I enjoyed about this was I'm just going to call it the Red Room.
Okay.
Because I thought, that was such a cool set. It was like clearly part of the base of the Men in Black.
Yeah.
Kind of like their interrogation room. Super cool looking, great lighting, like great set. But then they had just some guy in like a World War I gas mask.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that was, like what that was all about.
Well, that's the thing is I got that the Men in Black were actually like the aliens.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's what I got it was. Is that they were actually the race of the Flatwoods Monster. At least that's what the movie told me. But I love the cinematography in that scene and a handful of other shots in this. But I did feel that for every Red Room scene, there were some shots in this that I'm just like, why didn't we punch in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The lighting was superb.
Man, the red tubes across the sides, that was really, and then they clearly used some sort of fogger to add a bit more, depth to it. But yeah, I like that. Now the mask, I don't know. The only thing I could go is just like they needed some sort of mask that hid whoever's face was in it. But with that sort of thing, it's just like with the alien masks. I mean, you can kit bash those sorts of masks and make it look more alien. You go to a model store, you pick up, some either some spaceship model or some plastic model, and you just start gluing shit onto it. It doesn't even have to be that. You could literally like find garbage and start, piece together. I could find a piece of an old computer and kit bash that sort of thing together. So again, it goes back to, you could have used that, but like I would have probably put him in silhouette.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But yeah, as you were saying, like, or as I guess we were both saying, it's like, the lighting was great through the whole movie, but yeah, I wasn't crazy about the framing and the not changing the framing quite a bit in this movie.
There were some, like, it felt to me like again, as I said, for every Red Room scene, you got some that were just very basic coverage. Very basic coverage with maybe some push in here and there, a lot of wide shots. And I know that wide shots, typically when you're on a budget like this and you're like, hey, I got so many shots to do in a day and I got to run through maybe 5 different setups, that it's easier to just do like a wide shot and call it a day. But I think though that when you get into the edit, it ends up being limiting in terms of what you can do with that. Like the garage, there's a scene in this movie where Manny shows up and talks with
we'll call him a guy. We'll be vague. Yeah.
A guy. Yeah. And it's a wide shot. And there's like one cut in to close up for Manny and then a close up for the other guy. But like, that's it. It's just basic coverage. And I think that there is instances of this where it's like, we need to get a bit more than that. And again, that's something that, just comes down from planning out how you want this thing to look. Because again, there are some fantastic shots in this movie, but then there also are some ones that are just like, okay, that's fine. But for every one of those fantastic shots, if you have one that's right after it, that's going to be okay, it's fine. It is going to kind of take the audience out of it. Because they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, you had this awesome Red Room. I want to see more of that. Like, I don't know about you, John, but I was like, I want to see more of that sort of setup.
Yeah, and you could clearly tell that they knew what they were doing. And
yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it probably was a matter of like time. okay, we only have this much sunlight, or we only have this actor for so many hours, so we just need to get through these shots. Like, because there is a scene where just two actors in the woods. It's a medium shot, just the two of them talking. Never cuts to close-ups over the shoulders. The camera doesn't move. It's just a medium shot. And I have this feeling because, they were professionals on the set that they must have just only had time to do that, shot. And it's like, okay, well, we at least got an establishing. There's no confusion here. So let's move on. We need to, let's get the next thing. So,
yeah. What were some of your thoughts on the music and music in this one?
I will say this. I don't really remember the music, and I actually am going to say that I think that's a good thing, because it wasn't, at least it certainly was not distracting. I say either, the music should like hold the movie up like any John Williams score does, or you shouldn't recognize it at all. And so I think it's probably actually a good sign that I'm not really remembering any of the music in this right now.
The music in this I thought was fine. The music I thought was fitting for the subject matter. I didn't find it distracting, just kind of as you're saying. The overall edit in this was not bad, but I just think, again, kind of going back to the talking about structure in this, I think structure should have dictated the edit a bit more. I got a very David Lynch vibe out of this movie. Like I got kind of a Mulholland Drive type vibe out of this movie.
You said Lost Highway as well.
Well, Lost Highway too. Like both of those movies. And if you've watched a Lynch movie, you know kind of what I'm talking about. Where you just kind of come out of it go like, what the fuck just happened?
The fuck?
As I cough. Now, final thoughts on this movie, John. What were some of your final thoughts on Flatwoods?
I said at the top, I'll say it again. I admire the hell out of them. This was a hell of an undertaking. And I think for the most part, they succeeded. A lot of this, I said, I had minor gripes about a whole bunch of stuff. And I'll tell, for people who aren't filmmakers who are listening to this, a lot of my problems with this movie are just filmmaker problems that you probably be like, I don't really give a shit about that, John. Like there are scenes where, as a minor example, when she's interviewing people, she must have the character in the film must have set up the camera, hit record, and sat down in front of the camera. And I'm like, there's no way you don't have a second person on set manning the camera, and there's no audio person either, like that kind of stuff. But I'm like, Joe Q. Citizen isn't going to give a shit about that. So I had to kind of also wrap my head around a lot of the little problems I had in there where my cross to bear as being another filmmaker myself. But yeah, science fiction is a hell of a thing to undertake. And while I did have some issues with it, I'm damn impressed that, that they took this on, and I'd say they succeeded. It's far from perfect. No indie film is, but I would say it was a success in what they set out to do. I think they got there. Just, be nice if they could maybe do some reshoots and do a couple extra close-ups and shit like that.
Yeah. No, that's all good points, John. All good points. I'm in the same boat too. I mean, honestly, anyone who's able to create an indie film with no money, because that's the thing is, these things don't, especially sci-fi. If you're creating a genre film with no money, there definitely will be issues that come along the way. You don't have the leeway to quit your job and do every shot you want to get on a shot list. You don't have the resources to hire out the best people to accomplish every little bit that you have written down the storyboard. So I applaud them for getting this out and completing a film, except for Neil Breen. I don't applaud him for anything. He makes a movie. It's an abortion off the bat. Like, I'm sorry.
I used to believe that everybody who ever finished a movie should be applauded, but except for him. Neil Breen made a movie, so fuck that. Yeah,
except for him. So yeah, I applaud everyone who worked on this film, and I applaud their effort. I think everyone here who worked on this film definitely believed in the project that they're working on. I don't think anyone phoned it in. That being said, personally, I think that this movie would work much better as a short. I think that the concept is a really solid concept, but I think that that concept can be brought down to a short, a really solid short that really hits each one of these things. Like just the story of someone who encounters this monster and decides to try to unmask it over the course against the government, using documentary, encounter all these different people. That sort of thing is a really solid short. And I think that all of us are guilty of that, right? We take a short and we think, oh, we can stretch this thing out into a feature. And then we end up finding that, oh, wow, to fill a feature, you really have to make sure that every scene that comes in succession does the job and is necessary to push that narrative along. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing I think that this movie could improve upon, is really trimming this thing down to its bare essentials and really making it a short. Because I think it would be absolutely successful, and less of the things that we're talking about would be noticeable if this really was a very slim, very tight short that was really laser focused. But I mean, I gotta say, making it a feature, I haven't done it. John, you haven't done it yet. So, I mean, we're two assholes who haven't done this, talking about someone who has. So, I mean, I applaud Jamie. I'm glad that he let us watch this movie. I look forward to seeing what he comes up with next. And I hope he doesn't hate our guts after talking about his movie.
Well, no, I would even go as far as say I would recommend this, like, especially if you're into like alien lore and, you know, conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Like, this is a real town. This is a real, you know, folk story, you know, that some people believe is real. Some people think it's full of shit. So I would actually recommend watching this movie and then doing your research on it. I'm actually, I started to do some stuff, like looking up some stuff after the movie was over about, you know, the history of all this. So, yeah, if you're into like aliens and stuff, like an actual history, like, I mean, check it out. So I'll go so far as to recommend. So I hope he doesn't hate me, because I'd say watch this movie, support independent filmmaking. You know,
definitely. Yeah. No, I will put the links to this movie in our show notes. Please check it out. As I mentioned, when you support independent filmmakers, you really are supporting them. It's not going to, you know, just some slush fund or some venture capitalist who doesn't give a shit about the movie itself. This really does go towards the auteurs. So I absolutely am glad that we got to watch this, and I look forward to seeing what he does next. I know that Jamie does a lot of work in town for other people. He's a really solid editor, and I'm saying that as someone who also is an editor and works in post. So really glad we got to watch it, and I hope we get to see more from it. Word to your mother. So, with that said, John, where can they find you at on the internets?
All the usual social medias, and of course, obviously, as always, I'm going to plug J-Dub's Video Nasties. I have been doing a lot of freelance work, so I have been very, very, very behind on my own personal projects. But just like I said last episode, and I hope it's out, and I'm not going to say it by the next episode, my so many questions on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory and coming out soon. I got an interview in the can that I'm going to be looking to get out shortly after that. So I do have some material coming. Just bear with me. It'll be there eventually, I promise.
Nice. You can find me at Brian Connington. I also run the Psycho Show page. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Psycho Show. You can also find us on the Epicast Network, epicastnetwork.com. If you have a favorite movie or question you want to throw away, or if you believe in UFOs and the supernatural and ghosts and goblins and, I don't know, what else? Sea nymphs, those sorts of things, you can contact us at cinemapsychoshow.com. And be sure to subscribe or follow us wherever you listen to audio, and we will see you next time.
I'm starting to think my Uncle Ted should be in jail.
Yeah, he should be.